Think the Oscars slap ended Will Smith's A-list career? You're only seeing the surface. What if I told you the precise moment his Hollywood kingdom crumbled wasn't on that stage, but years earlier, embedded in obscure contract clauses he likely signed without a second thought? We're diving deep into the legally binding fine print that truly dictates A-list power, and how it quietly stripped one of Hollywood's biggest stars of his privilege. The fading star. Understanding A-list erosion. To understand the contract, you must first understand the myth it dismantled. We believe A-list status is about fame, money, and fame again. That's the public story. The real story, the business story, is about control. It's about an unspoken, unwritten privilege that operates above the written rules. For years, Will Smith didn't just have a career, he had a kingdom. He could command $30 million paychecks, control massive productions, and expect the red carpet to always roll out. His image wasn't just positive, it was bulletproof, engineered over decades from The Fresh Prince to the global blockbuster king. Hollywood's rules for someone at that level are simple. You can be difficult if you're profitable, you can be demanding if you deliver hits, and your private life can be messy as long as the public brand remains spotless. The system protects its most valuable assets. The Oscars slap was more than a moment. It was the ultimate breach of those unspoken rules. It wasn't a private scandal or a controversial opinion. It was a public, physical act of violence at the industry's most sacred, self-congratulatory event. This didn't just hurt Smith's brand, it assaulted Hollywood's brand. It turned their night of glory into a global crisis of reputation. The industry can forgive much, but it cannot forgive an act that makes the entire business look out of control and unsafe. The slap was a bright, flashing sign that the most reliable star in the world had become fundamentally unreliable. This is why the impact was different, and why it had such long-term power. Other stars have survived scandals. The key difference was the venue and the visceral nature of the act. It created immediate and profound collateral damage for the Academy, for broadcast partners, and for every studio executive who had a Will Smith project on their slate. It wasn't just a personal mistake, it was a professional cataclysm that broke the foundational trust between the star and the system that employed him. It transformed him, in boardroom discussions, from a prized asset to a liability that needed to be managed. And management, in Hollywood, always begins with the contract. Pre-slap leverage, what Will Smith used to command. Before the fall, there was a fortress of leverage. For decades, Will Smith operated with a level of contractual power that defines true Hollywood royalty. His deals were not mere employment agreements. They were blueprints for building an empire, granting him privileges that insulated him from the risks normal actors face. To see how far he fell, you must first see how high he stood. The most visible sign was the money. Upfront salaries rumored to be as high as $35 million per film, placing him in the top echelon of earners. But the real power lay beyond the paycheck, in the unseen benefits that studios only grant to indispensable partners. This included immense creative control. Reports and common industry practice for stars of his caliber suggest he could command script approval, influence casting decisions for key supporting roles, and even have final say on a film's marketing campaign. His production company, Westbrook, became a vehicle for package deals, allowing him to attach himself to projects as a star and producer, thereby capturing more back-end profit and decision-making authority. Then there is the critical evolution of the morality clause. This provision, present in most major contracts, allows a studio to terminate a deal if a star's behavior brings them into public disrepute, contempt, or scandal. Historically, these clauses were blunt instruments, used in extreme cases from the silent era to the McCarthy hearings. For much of Smith's peak, however, his leverage was so colossal that this clause was considered a dormant formality, a threat for other, less valuable stars. His public image as America's charming, conscientious blockbuster hero made the idea of him triggering it seem absurd. The clause existed on paper, but his brand power and profitability essentially neutered it. He had, through sheer commercial success, negotiated himself into a position where his behavior was implicitly beyond reproach, because the cost of losing him was deemed higher than any potential scandal. This pre-slap power structure created a dangerous illusion that his A-list status was a permanent crown granted by audience love. In reality, it was a complex set of temporary permissions, meticulously detailed in contracts. The kingdom wasn't his. He was just its most powerful and well-compensated tenant, and the lease had fine print. The silent killers, the clauses that triggered his decline. The Oscar slap was the detonator, but the explosives were already in place, buried in the fine print of his own contracts. These are the silent killer clauses, standard, dry, legal language that suddenly became active, transforming a public relations crisis into a contractual breach. They are the mechanisms that allowed the industry to surgically dismantle his privilege. First, the reputation or morality clause. This is the broadest and most powerful weapon. While we touched on its historical context, its modern application is key. Post-slap, studio lawyers didn't just see a viral video, they reviewed the clause's language. Standard wording holds a star to a standard of conduct that does not offend the community or bring the individual or the studio into public disrepute, contempt, scandal, or ridicule. The global, prolonged controversy following the Oscars provided a clear, documentable case of exactly that. This clause gave studios a direct legal out, not just from current projects, but from future options. It transforms subjective outrage into objective breach of contract. This connects to the second killer, material adverse change or force majeure. Often associated with natural disasters, these clauses can also cover events that make it impossible or commercially unviable to proceed with a contracted project. A star becoming the epicenter of a sustained negative media storm, damaging the marketability of a film, can be argued as a material adverse change to the project's prospects. This is how a project like the Netflix sequel to Bright wasn't just paused informally. It could be formally shelved under the contract's own terms, protecting the studio from a breach claim by Smith. Finally, the pay-or-play paradox. This clause guarantees an actor their full fee even if the project is canceled before filming. On the surface, it's a win for the star. Smith likely received substantial settlements for shelved projects. But here's the paradox. Getting paid to not work is a catastrophic signal in Hollywood. It means the studio calculated that paying a multi-million-dollar penalty for inactivity was a better financial decision than moving forward with the star attached. It is the ultimate vote of no confidence, frozen into a contract check. It funds your life while actively ending your career momentum, making you radioactive for the next project. These clauses did not appear after the fact. They were there all along, sleeping in every major deal he signed. His pre-slap leverage made them seem irrelevant. The slap activated them. It turned standard legal safeguards into the precise tools for his professional demotion, proving that in Hollywood, your contract is not your shield when you are the one who breaks the peace. The Studio Playbook: How Hollywood Sidelines a Star. When a star of Will Smith's magnitude triggers the silent killers in their contract, Hollywood doesn't issue a press release firing them. The process is more surgical, more strategic, and designed to minimize the studio's own risk while maximizing pressure on the star. This is the Studio Playbook, a series of calculated, business-driven moves that quietly transfer power from the actor back to the system. The first tactic is strategic shelving. Projects aren't always outright canceled. Instead, they are placed on indefinite hold. This happened immediately with Netflix's Bright 2 and Apple's Fast and Loose. From a business standpoint, this is a masterstroke. It allows the studio to publicly express a commitment to the project and the star while privately waiting to see if the scandal subsides. More importantly, it freezes the star's creative and commercial pipeline. No new deals can be made while these tentpole projects linger in limbo, creating a career vacuum. Next comes the cooling off period. This is an unofficial but universally understood industry timeout. The studio signals, through back channels and stalled negotiations, that the star needs to retreat from the spotlight. The unspoken goal is to let public outrage fade and, crucially, to let the star's quote, their asking price, deflate from lack of use. When or if they return to the market, they are no longer negotiating from the peak of their power. They are negotiating from a position of need, allowing studios to re-engage them at lower fees and with fewer privileged clauses. It's a passive-aggressive renegotiation. Finally, there is the reassignment of roles. This is the most definitive endgame. When a studio decides the star is no longer a viable anchor for a major franchise or prestige project, they don't leave the role empty. They quietly shift it to emerging or established talent deemed safe. While no direct public replacement of Smith in a major franchise occurred overnight, the industry's pipeline of new A-list vehicles began flowing around him. Younger actors and equally bankable but less risky stars were offered the kinds of leading roles that would have once been sent to Smith's team first. The system demonstrates it has moved on not by firing one star, but by promoting others. This playbook isn't personal, it's procedural. It protects investments, manages risk, and reasserts the studio's ultimate control. The slap didn't get Will Smith blacklisted in a dark room. It made him an unacceptable variable in a multi-hundred-million-dollar equation. The playbook is simply the formula the industry uses to remove that variable, one quiet, business-justified step at a time. The path forward. Can Will Smith reclaim his throne? So, where does this leave Will Smith? Can the king reclaim his throne? The uncomfortable truth, dictated by the very contract mechanics we've outlined, is that the throne as he knew it is gone. The path forward isn't about a redemption arc. It's about a fundamental recalibration of what a career at the highest level now means for him. The first hurdle is the redemption arc fallacy. Public apologies, therapy disclosures, and media tours are for the court of public opinion. The court of studio finance operates differently. An executive's decision to greenlight a $200 million film with Smith isn't based on whether he seems sorry. It's a cold calculation of insurability, marketability, and the potential for renewed controversy. His next major studio project, Emancipation, was a critical and commercial underperformance. In Hollywood's ledger, that isn't a step toward redemption. It's fresh data confirming the commercial risk identified after the slap. True professional rehabilitation in the studio system isn't about sentiment. It's about delivering an undeniable, scandal-proof hit that makes him a safe financial bet again. A far taller order than winning back public favor. This leads to the second potential path, the independent route. This is where many sideline stars pivot. It means stepping outside the traditional studio system to make films with streamers, independent financiers, or through his own Westbrook production banner at a different scale. These entities often have different risk tolerances and can move faster. However, this path comes with a trade-off. Independence often means smaller budgets, reduced global marketing muscle, and a different tier of cultural impact. He may work consistently and creatively, but it would be in a lane parallel to the dizzying heights of his former A-list dominion. It's a future as a respected actor and producer, not as the bankable blockbuster anchor. This entire saga culminates in one critical lesson for any aspiring artist: understand every line. Will Smith's story is the ultimate masterclass in this. For years, he benefited from the positive clauses, the back-end points, the approval rights, the massive paychecks. The fatal error, a common one at the pinnacle of success, was likely overlooking the negative ones, the morality clauses, the force majeure language, because they seemed irrelevant. He learned, in the most brutal way possible, that every clause in a contract is relevant. Your leverage is only as strong as the worst-behaved line in your deal. The most important clause isn't about money or control. It's the one that defines how you can lose it all. For the next generation of stars, the lesson is clear. Before you build a kingdom on a contract, make sure you know where the traps are buried. Your career might depend on a single sentence you never thought would matter. If this breakdown of Hollywood's career collapse was valuable to you, make sure to subscribe for more.